Hi everyone, welcome to a Centrist View, and I am continuing on with my series of going through the Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership. Some people try to say that it has absolutely nothing to do with anything, but I've already read through about half of it. It's a 900-page document, and I'm finding that quite a few of the policies that are being passed are included in this document, but I think this gives a little explanation as to why, and whether or not you agree with it or not, at least it gives a little explanation as to method to the madness, so to speak. So I'm just going to get started. This is part 2, the foreword, A Promise to America, written by Kevin D. Roberts, PhD. America and the conservative movement are during an era of division and danger. Our political class has been discredited by wholesale dishonesty and corruption. Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Now, when they say the ruling and cultural elite, they mean the Democrats. This was written in 23 when Joe Biden was still president. So, the claim is, inflation is ravaging family budgets. Well, I don't think anybody could argue with that one. Drug overdose deaths continue to escalate. I'm pretty sure that's true. I think we all know that fentanyl has just really absolutely just devastated this country as far as that goes. Children suffer toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading school libraries. Well, that sounds a little sensationalistic to a point. The toxic normalization of transgenderism. Again, this is not a topic I care to go into on this channel, transgenderism. Toxic normalization, I think, is a little strong. Drag queens and pornography invading school libraries. Okay, so I have not researched this. That may or may not be true. But I think, I don't know if there's drag queen shows or not at libraries anywhere in the country. But pornography invading school libraries, I'd like to see what they're defining as pornography. We had a book, who was it? I think his name was Paul Zindel, was an author, wrote young teens when I was growing up in the 80s. It was a taboo book to read. The school library didn't have it, but the public library did, and we would sneak it from our parents, and My Darling, My Hamburger, and Pardon Me, You're Stepping on My Eyeball. And they were coming of age books for teenagers, but for the era they were a little bit sexually explicit for teenagers. And there were people who actually considered that pornography at the time. So, again, I guess that's one of those perception and what you define something as type things. So, anyway, moving on. China is in a Cold War against U.S. interests, values, and people. I don't know if that's true or not. Again, the China issue is not a subject I'm well-versed on, so I should probably refrain from commenting on that. Low-income communities are drowning in addiction and government dependence. Addiction and government dependence. Well, I've lived in some pretty low-income communities, and I've seen some people trying really, really hard every day just to get food on the table. Working their butts off. Not just sitting around taking a paycheck. Yes, there are plenty of those, but not all low-income communities are nothing but government dependence. Government assistance, yes. I remember when I lived in San Bernardino, one of my neighbors' son was very upset. He was a very good student. He very much enjoyed school, but it was a very poor neighborhood, and his school, they didn't have enough textbooks to go around, so the students had to share the textbooks in the classroom, and therefore no one could take a textbook home. And he was very upset that he couldn't study for a test that he didn't feel prepared for. He couldn't bring the test home and do some more studying. And I don't know, in a country as rich as America, it's just wrong on pretty much every level. But so, or is it government dependence, or is it government assistance? Because from a young age, they don't have the same opportunities as middle class and higher income communities. Of course, that's probably an age-old question I'm not going to be able to answer today. Just something I want to point out is, another way of looking all this throughout the analysis. The next one. Totalitarian cult known as the Great Awakening. Well, I personally have a little issue with too much wokeism. Again, in the center, I think the Great Awakening, the totalitarian cult, I just don't even know what to say. That's very strong language. It's sensationalistic language. The moral foundations of our society are in peril. Moral foundations. It's one of those things that who defines morality? Do you get your morality from your Bible? Do you get it from your life experience? Do you get it from because that's what your parents taught you? Where did they get it from? The moral foundations. I'm sure this will go more into this later, but again, that's some pretty loaded language right there. Moral foundations of our society are in peril. I could go on forever about that, so I think I'll just move on instead. In the original Mandate for Leadership, which was published January 1981, it was 20 volumes and 3,000 pages. It had 2,000 conservative policies to reform the federal government. By the end of 1981, more than 60% of the recommendations had become policy. Conservatives should be confident that we can reduce Conservatives should be confident that we can rescue our kids, reclaim our culture, reserve our economy, and defeat the American left at home and abroad. Anti-American left. See, right there, they talk about how there's division, but that's really divisive language. The anti-American left. The left are just as American as the right is. If they were born here, they're American, period. Nobody's more American than another American. Just because they believe that people's tax dollars should go towards people, benefiting and improving the lives of the people rather than tax breaks for the rich, does not make them anti-American. It makes them very different. Very, very different from the right. And there seems to be a correlation, so far it hasn't been spoken, maybe it will be, that conservative values are American values, and that's propagandist. American values are what they mentioned, either freedom of liberty and such. Conservative values go a little deeper, again, things like pro-choice and involving the Protestant Christian God in legislation and, legislating according to biblical tenets. And, that's conservative values. Whereas the democratic values, the liberal values, are things like bodily autonomy and freedom of and from religion, tax dollars should go to benefiting the lives of the people, rather than benefiting the lives of corporations and the people who run them, the very, very, very wealthy people who own and run them. I'm not saying that is exactly what the right does, but to a degree, if you look at the big beautiful bill, many economists say it's going to put us add something like $3.4 trillion to the deficit. Excuse me. And it cuts a lot of programs, such as food programs and education programs for people who really need help with food and education, because education equals opportunity. You know, none of these CEOs that are getting these huge tax breaks I mean, some of them may have come from poor neighborhoods, but none of them are up in there without a college education. I mean, all right, there may be a rare exception, but most of them are pretty well educated. And that education is what got them in the door and got them opportunities. So, okay, I'm getting a little off track here. But that's the difference. I mean, all our American values, you know, the American dream, but there's a difference between liberal values and conservative values. And this whole thing of calling the left anti-American, that is very divisive. It's really, really not good for our country to be looking at each other as, I say each other as citizens. We shouldn't be looking at each other as enemies, and that's basically what this does. The anti-American left, at home and abroad, it's very antagonistic. Okay. So again, I'm almost at about the 10-minute mark, and you know, take this in short doses. Some videos will probably be longer than that, but that's the end of the first section. Next section goes into what the conservative promise actually is. What is the promise? And I will see you there. Thank you.